For 3 years, I worked inside a bank. Every morning, people walked through those doors believing their money was in safe hands. They came to save for a home, pay their bills, or plan for their future. They trusted us with the things they had worked their whole lives to earn. But almost every single day, someone would sit across from my desk, holding a bank statement with the same confused look on their face and ask, "Can you help me understand where my money went?" Most of the time, the money wasn't stolen. It disappeared a few dollars at a time. And after 3 years, I realized something. The most expensive fees aren't always the biggest ones. They're the ones you never notice. When I got my job at the bank, I thought I'd finally found a career where I could genuinely help people. I loved numbers, I loved solving problems, and I believed money wasn't just about dollars, it was about dreams. A family's first home, a child's education, a retirement someone had spent decades planning for. Every account had a story behind it, and I wanted to be part of helping those stories succeed. Those first few months were exactly what I'd hoped for. I met students opening their very first bank account, parents saving for their children's future, small business owners chasing big dreams. Every day felt meaningful, every conversation reminded me why I chose this job, and every evening, I went home believing I'd made someone's life just a little bit easier. But after a while, I started noticing something. Different people, different lives, different accounts, yet they all seemed to be asking the exact same question. Can you help me understand where my money went? At first, I thought they had simply missed something. I had no idea. That question would completely change the way I looked at banking. At first, I thought these conversations would be easy. Someone would come in with a question. I'd explain it, they'd understand, and we'd both move on with our day. But that's not what happened. The same question kept coming back. Day after day, week after week, customer after customer, no matter their age, their income, or how long they'd been with the bank, sooner or later they'd point to their statement and ask, "Can you help me understand this?" Sometimes it was a $12 maintenance fee. Sometimes it was an ATM fee. Sometimes it was a paper statement fee that had quietly appeared month after month. And sometimes, it was an overdraft fee that completely caught someone by surprise. None of these charges looked very large on their own. $12, $3, $5, they almost looked insignificant, but that's exactly what made them so easy to ignore. Until one day, someone added them all together. Imagine taking just a few sunflower seeds from this jar every month. You probably wouldn't notice, but keep doing it for a year, and suddenly the jar looks very different. That's what these fees reminded me of. They rarely emptied someone's account overnight. Instead, they quietly chipped away at it, one small charge at a time. That's when I realized, the real problem wasn't that people couldn't do the math. The problem was that nobody had ever shown them where to look. Most customers trusted that if something important was costing them money, someone would point it out. But banking doesn't usually work that way. Most fees are listed, they're disclosed, they're written into the account agreement. The problem is, almost nobody reads 50 pages of fine print before opening a checking account. And honestly, I couldn't blame them. I'll never forget one quiet afternoon. It had been a long day. The lobby was almost empty. I was getting ready to finish my paperwork when one last customer walked in. She wasn't angry, she wasn't frustrated, she looked embarrassed. She sat down across from me, carefully unfolded her bank statement, and quietly asked, "Could you help me understand these charges?" I started reading through each transaction. One fee by itself didn't seem like much. $12 here, $3 there, a few more dollars the following month. Nothing unusual, everything matched the account terms. Nothing had been charged by mistake. But when I kept scrolling, I noticed the same fees appearing, month after month, for almost an entire year. I added everything together. Then I looked back at her. She wasn't upset about one fee. She was surprised by how many small fees had quietly accumulated over time. And then she said something that stayed with me long after she left. "If I'd known sooner, I would have changed it." That sentence hit me harder than I expected. Because in many cases, there were simple changes that could reduce or even eliminate certain fees. Switching to paperless statements, maintaining a minimum balance, choosing an account that better matched someone's needs. But many customers didn't realize those options existed until long after the fees had already added up. That evening, I didn't stop thinking about that conversation, not because anyone had broken the rules, but because I kept asking myself one question: what if people understood their accounts before the fees started, instead of after? That question changed everything. After that conversation, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every customer trusted the bank to look after their money, but I started wondering, were they using the right account in the first place? Did they know there were ways to avoid some of these fees? And if those options existed, why weren't more people using them? So I did what I always do when something doesn't make sense. I started asking questions. The more I read, the more I realized something surprising. Many of the fees I had been explaining every day weren't necessarily permanent. Some accounts waived maintenance fees if customers kept a minimum balance. Others waived them when direct deposit was set up. Some banks offered completely different account types with fewer monthly charges. Even something as simple as switching to paperless statements could eliminate a recurring fee. The information wasn't hidden, it was available, but it was usually buried inside long account agreements, brochures, or web pages that most people never had a reason to read. And honestly, I couldn't blame anyone. When was the last time you read every page of a banking agreement before opening an account? Most of us don't. We assume we've chosen the right account and move on with our lives. Until one day, a small charge appears, then another, and another. That's when something finally clicked for me. Banks offer products, customers make choices, but those choices are only good choices if people actually understand the rules. I realized I wasn't frustrated with banking. I was frustrated with how complicated it felt for everyday people. Money shouldn't require a dictionary and 50 pages of fine print just to avoid paying unnecessary fees. That became my new mission. If I could help people understand their accounts before the fees started, they could make better decisions. They could ask better questions. And most importantly, they could keep more of the money they worked so hard to earn. Over the next few months, I kept doing my job. I helped people open accounts. I answered questions. I explained fees. And whenever I could, I showed customers simple ways to avoid paying them in the future. Sometimes it was as easy as switching to paperless statements. Sometimes it meant choosing a different account. Sometimes, all they needed was someone to explain the rules in plain English. And every time I saw that look of relief on someone's face, I realized something. People weren't looking for complicated financial advice. They were looking for clarity. That's when I understood, the most valuable thing I could give someone wasn't a new account. It was confidence. Confidence to ask questions. Confidence to understand where their money was going. Confidence to make better financial decisions. Because when people understand their money, they're no longer afraid of I. That sentence stayed with me for weeks. Eventually, I realized I had a choice. I could keep helping one customer at a time, sitting behind this desk. Or, I could share what I'd learned with thousands of people, maybe even millions, not by telling them what to do, but by helping them understand the choices they already have. I didn't leave because I stopped believing in banking. I left because I started believing something even more important. Financial knowledge shouldn't begin after a mistake. It should come before one. And that's why this channel exists. Not to tell you what bank to use, or what products to buy, but to help you understand how money works, so you can make decisions with confidence. Because the more you understand your money, the more control you have over your future. The more questions I asked, the more one thing became clear. Most people weren't losing money because they were careless. They were losing money because nobody had ever explained the rules in a way that made sense. And once I understood those rules, I started seeing the same patterns everywhere. I learned that the type of account you choose can make a huge difference. Some accounts charge monthly maintenance fees, others don't. Some waive those fees if you receive direct deposits, keep a minimum balance, or meet certain requirements. Yet many customers stayed in the same account for years, never realizing there might be a better option for them. Then there were overdraft fees. Many people assumed their card would simply decline if there wasn't enough money. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. Understanding how your own account handles overdrafts can make a real difference, because different banks, and even different account settings, may work differently. It reminded me that asking one simple question ahead of time can save a lot of frustration later. What surprised me most wasn't the fees themselves. It was how much money people could save simply by understanding their own accounts. Reading the account terms, reviewing your statement every month, asking questions when something doesn't make sense, comparing account options instead of assuming every bank works the same way. None of these things are exciting, but they can make a real difference over time. That's when everything finally clicked. I wasn't just learning how banks worked. I was learning how to translate complicated financial information into something ordinary people could actually use. And for the first time, I realized, maybe my future wasn't inside this building anymore. Looking back, I don't regret the 3 years I spent at the bank. In fact, I'm grateful for them, because they taught me something no textbook ever could. Money isn't difficult because numbers are complicated. It's difficult because nobody teaches us how the system works. Most people aren't bad with money. They're simply making decisions without having all the information. And honestly, I probably would have done exactly the same thing if I hadn't worked behind that desk. Every customer I met taught me something. Some reminded me how confusing financial language can be. Others showed me how stressful money worries become when nobody explains things clearly. And some reminded me that one simple conversation can completely change someone's confidence. Those conversations stayed with me. Long after the bank closed each evening, they were still in my head. Eventually, I realized something. Behind this desk, I could help one person at a time. But outside these walls, maybe I could help thousands, maybe even millions, not by giving financial advice, but by explaining complicated money topics in a way anyone could understand. No confusing jargon, no lectures, just simple explanations, honest conversations, and practical ideas that help people make better decisions. So, if you've ever looked at your bank statement, wondered where your money went, felt confused by financial terms, or thought, I wish someone had explained this sooner, then you're in the right place. Because from today, we're going to figure it out together. One mystery at a time, one lesson at a time, one smarter decision at a time. Welcome to Nutsy's Money Adventures. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, and most importantly, keep more of your seeds